This is the final word story time, number 228. Get your Pathé newsreader voices out. Raise your hands to the sky. It's time for some tales from cricket history, both the far away and the more recent. Jeff Lemon and Adam Collins on the show, brought to you by Maurice Blackburn, the number one plaintiff law firm in the country. And Adam, I can see down the screen you're wearing hot pink. Is this your football club? You were about to go running. Have you been running?
I have. I have since we last spoke. I'm tapering for the Lord's Taverners half marathon now. I've done my longest run, and I just went out for a 5K on my feet. Wasn't at all taxed by it. Feeling quite strong, and as strong as one can feel when they're 40. But feeling fit enough that it's not going to. I've got ambition. When we go to Edinburgh next week, and they've been training for quite a while. So this is the right time to chip in. We're going to have to rinse you all. That's just the way these things work. It's not personal. It's not us trying to be. It's not us trying to. We're not doing it for ourselves. It's all for the charity. So the link in the show notes. Please click it, and please work out how much you feel like you might want to contribute to our £30,000 target. 28,000 young people went through Taverners programs last year. So it's a show about numbers, and actually. 200 and what's our episode today? 228?
228.
Yeah, if you fudge it, you squint at it. 228, 228, 28,000. Not quite, doesn't work, does it? But you know what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, we could get over the line. There's that little extra chip-in factor that the platform that we use throws in a bit somehow along the way. There's something works. I can't remember exactly how it works, but there's whatever you do, there's a bit of extra.
Gift aid. Yeah, gift aid's really good. That's partly a government thing. So that's right. You can help bolster it yet further if you're contributing in that way. So it's up and about. We're up and about. Please be with us. May the Lord be with you, and also with you.
In every way that you can. If you want to join up with us on Patreon as well, that's how you send in a number for the show to feed the stories that we're doing, and you also can get rid of the automated ad breaks on a different feed if you would like to do that. Let's get into it because we got numbers to get through.
Sure do.
Nerd Pledge is the game we play. Nerd Pledge, the reverse quiz that we play with nice people on the internet. They fund this program. They send through a contribution in a format, in a configuration of currency of their choice, and that configuration links to cricket. We have to figure out what it means. Lucas Colley is our first pledger, new pledger. Welcome to the ranks, Lucas. Wouldn't be a David Colley relation because it's a slightly different spelling, I believe. So he's not going to be a blue collie dog. But no. $13.38 is the pledge, a handsome amount in the AUD. There wasn't a clue attached. So I took this as the most obvious way I could think to read this, Adam. I thought, Did somebody take 13 for 38 in a first-class match?
Right. I was going to say it's 13 for 38, or it's some way of pulling together 13.38 in a bowling average, or 38 runs.
38 runs you could do in a year or something.
In a year, that's obviously not a series, but a year. Or I'd go. What else would I do there? I would think about the 1st of March, 1938, as a birth date. I would go to the 1,338th Test match.
Yep.
These are the things that would go through my mind. But if there is a 13 for 38, that's obviously an impressive enough analysis that it's getting my attention, and it's clearly gotten yours. I look forward to it.
It has got my attention. In fact, there are 3 13 for 38s in first-class history, which is going pretty well, but given it's AUD, I think it will be the one taken by an Australian. A gentleman of the name of Tom McKibben, who I've been interested to learn about in researching this answer, thanks to Max Bonnell, who wrote a book on McKibben, which was useful in drawing together some of the information for this answer, which centres around a match on the Ashes Tour of 1896. Adam, it was a 3-test tour, but as tended to be the way in those days, there were a lot of other things that went on that trip. Now, 13 for 38 in Australian first-class cricket, or Australians playing first-class cricket, not many have better figures than 13 for 38. If you look at the Australians who've done better, there are some of the biggest names. Fred Spofford did it a couple of times, George Giffen a couple of times, Terra Turner, Bob Massey, Arthur Maley, Hugh Trumbull, some of the stars. William Howell did it, Ron Oxenham did it. They're slightly lower profile. Ron Oxenham made 100 on Test debut, but probably lowest profile of the lot might be Tom McKibben, because he played 5 seasons of first-class cricket, Adam. That was it. Then he chucked it in. He managed to play 6 tests in that time, didn't dominate, took 17 wickets in his 6 tests. But first-class level, 57 matches, 320 wickets at 19. So didn't play much, but my lord, did he take bags. Now, like serious operator. In the style of the time, Adam, he's an off-spinner who is sometimes described as medium pace. So he's a breakback bowler who uses like soft wickets to get the ball to deviate.
Right. I the only thing I know about Tom McKibben really is that it was thought that he did not keep his arm straight when he bowled. That is, I'm sure that might have. Well, I'm not sure. I sense that might have something to do with the short career span. But
well,
sure you're about to talk about this, no doubt.
Maybe. I will come to that in a moment. So you've got this breakback bowler. He's a country lad. He's born out near Bathurst, rural New South Wales. That is for those not au fait. He stays out there until the age of 24, and then he comes to the big smoke to play some cricket in Country Week. They have a carnival called Country Week in Sydney. And sadly, I can't find any scorecards for Country Week, but I'm assured that he dominates that carnival so intensely that he immediately gets picked to play for New South Wales off the back of Country Week Carnival. Good Mr. Smith goes to Washington kind of stuff. And his first game you will enjoy is against the team of A.E. Stoddart, our dear Stoddy, who is touring.
This is 84, 85.
1894.
94, 95. Yeah, the great Ashes series where Stoddy led England to it became an extraordinary 3-2 series, didn't it?
Yes, and the series in which Arthur Conyngham played his one and only test match. All of these are things that I've been thinking about a lot because I've been working on the Storytime book teaser again, which hopefully will be out. It's slated to come out near the end of this year, and it has some of our favourite stories in it, which naturally enough include Arthur Conyngham and A.E. Stoddart.
It has got big stocking stuffer energy. This book. This has got big, buy it for your dad or your uncle or your auntie who likes a bit. It's got that kind of aura around it at the moment, which is fine. I mean, we haven't really done something like this before, a joint book project, and one that I suspect will have broader appeal than the types of books that we would otherwise write. Put it that way.
They're tales. We're just telling some tales in an informal sort of way. So Conyngham features, Stoddart features, and they both feature in the early career of Tom McKibben. So he plays this game against the Stoddy touring 11 for New South Wales. Doesn't do anything particularly dramatic in that game, but he gets another game against Victoria in January. He takes 5 for 34 in the first innings, 8 wickets in the match, and then he walks out against Queensland, 5 for 19 in the first innings, 9 for 68 in the second. Absolutely eats them up. Gets another crack against the Stoddart team for New South Wales, takes 5 for 98. And Conningham's playing in these games as well. There's a combined New South Wales-Queensland game. Plays South Australia, takes an expensive sort of 6 for, like a Murali 6 for in the first innings.
A titch.
Titch, really. 6 for 130, something like that. But then butters up with 8 for 66 to win the game. So these are his first 5 matches, I think, and 4 matches in first-class cricket. He's just absolutely going haywire. Gets picked for the 5th test of the series. He's not influential. He takes a couple of wickets. England dominate all over the scorecard, and they win. And they, after Australia's come back to 2-2, they win that 5th test, England, and take the series. But it still means his opening season is 6 matches, 6 fifers, 44 wickets at 16.
Wow.
Like quite the start. And that's including a test match where he didn't take a lot, so only took a couple. So he's bowled himself into the test side within 5 games. And he's doing this because he gets absolutely mad fizz on the ball. So described as an off-spinner, but he rips it. And he seems to be in that mould of, that kind of Stuart McGill style where as a leg spinner, I just want to spin it as hard as possible. I want to put as much work on it as I can because that's fun. So others of the era do they place their little spinners down there, but he rips the ball down. And consequently, turns it a long way. Consequently, not super accurate. He's known for that you can pick him off if you wait for the bad ball, and consequently always gets accused of chucking. And he gets accused of chucking so much that his entire Cricinfo bio, if you go to his page, is like 3 lines that basically says, this guy was a chucker, thin, which I think is disgraceful. I think his career is a lot bigger than that, And it is one note in his career that some people criticised his bowling. But if you do some further reading on it, the suggestion is that he gets this much spin because his wrist is crazily flexible. There's a description of him placing his hand on a table and then being able to rotate the wrist almost all the way around. Now, who else do we know who could do that, who bowled off spin? Exactly.
Just talk me through. So you put your hand on the table. I'm going to try and do it now, see how far I can get around. Not very far.
Is it face down? And then, so the average person among us can do it like 180 degrees, right?
As in the hand, you're turning your hand. Am I turning my hand towards myself?
I think your hand's flat on a table.
Yeah.
And then you've got to see what kind of rotation you can get just with your wrist.
I'm not in the swivel chair that I'm in.
Not in the swivel chair,
okay.
No. As in turning it from flat to from down to up, most people can do, but you can't go much further than that.
I see. You're trying.
And I get the impression that he could just keep on going in that way that Murali could, where you watch Murali would do the thing where he'd point his palm at you and then he would rotate the wrist like 360 degrees.
Yeah.
It was crazy, and that's how he was able to put so much work on the ball. Okay. So it seems to me like we've got an early Murali style, not with the bent arm, with the childhood illness, but with the wrist. And he cops the same kind of flack. And we were always, during Murali's career, it was always said that this is totally unique and no one else will bowl like this. But humans are interesting, and they come in all kinds of different shapes and configurations. And so it seems that there was somebody else like this. There was somebody out there able to really give it a rip. And it's worth noting that he got called for throwing during Country Week, even though he took all those wickets. He never got called in first-class cricket. And he played a lot of first-class cricket in those 5 years in Australia and in England. And there was a fair bit of hostility to him amongst commentators in England who would say that he was throwing, but no umpires ever called him for throwing. So read into that what you will, but it seems to me a fairly good indicator that what he was doing looked okay on the field.
I've been thinking a bit about this. I played a game, I can't remember which one it was. I played quite a few already this year, where there was a guy with an action that looked on face value like, well, you might say it looked a bit kinky. Like it looked a bit kinky with the kink in the elbow, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, how gutsy for that guy to rock up and keep playing week in, week out, knowing that every game that he plays, there are people in the batting team sniggering away to each other saying that he chucks it. But that whether he does or doesn't, by the it's not as though you can measure the 15 degrees when you're when you're playing club cricket.
Yeah.
So there's no way of knowing one way or the other. But I guess my point is, it's regardless of that, it's that if you know that you're going to have your action undermined every time you bowl and every time you play, and yet you front up week in, week out, I think there's something to be said for the character of those bowlers.
I think so too, Ed, because I think that and we've talked about this in relation to Ian Metcalfe and the throwing sort of obsession of the late 50s and 60s. There's all of the throwing accusations around Aboriginal bowlers, around Alec Henry and Jack Marsh and Eddie Gilbert, to try to force them out of the game. Like, throwing was weaponised against bowlers who people didn't like or people wanted to get rid of in some way. So it's not surprising to me that there's English press criticising McKibbin more than Australian press. There's a partisan note to that. And like you say, if you're showing up and bowling and you know that your action looks a bit weird, because some actions do look weird because the arm is doing things in real time that are too fast for the naked eye to properly pick up. And that's how it ended up being with Murali. Once you're able to break down what was happening with his action, it looked like the arm straightened, the arm didn't straighten. So that's the kind of situation I suspect that we might have with Tom McKibbin. So 1895 and 96, he has another good short season in Australia. Takes 8 for 93 to beat the Victorians in a Boxing Day match, takes 10 in the match in a test trial in March. So he's on the boat to England. Takes a little while to settle, 1 wicket in the first 3 games, and then gets into it. 7 for 23 against Yorkshire, 5 for 41 against, who was it? I've forgotten now. 7 for 80 against Surrey. He takes, might have been Hampshire, the other one. Doesn't play the first test, which is interesting. Australia have Giffen, they've got Harry Trott, they've got Hugh Trumbull, they've got Charles Eadie. They're all kind of all-rounders. So they've got Clem Hill batting at 7. They've got Eadie batting at number 8. This is the bloke who made 500 in a club game in Tasmania, so, could hit the ball a bit.
Yeah. Yep.
So, the break of day, 566 that he made. So they're batting all the way down, basically, because a lot of their top order are very good bowlers. So they feel like they don't need him, I guess. But he plays the second and third test, takes 6 wickets in the second test, which is a close win for Australia, takes 5 in the third test when W.G. Grace cheats at the Oval and waters the pitch before day 5, and Bobby Peel comes out and bowls Australia out for 44 on a very isolated rain shower that just happened to hit the wicket square of the Oval and nowhere else in Kensington. This is a paragraph from Wisden about the tour. It says, quote, "No one who attempts to get such spin on the ball as he does can expect to be very accurate, but when he did happen to get his length, he was almost irresistible. In a long experience of first-class cricket, we have never seen any bowler get on such a break both ways as he did at the Oval in the first match against Surrey. In trying to play him on that particular day, even a batsman so skilled and experienced as Walter Reed confessed himself utterly at fault." So when he's on, you cannot hit him. Our game comes along. Yeah. And he plays against Lancashire in Liverpool. Australia all out 124. Johnny Briggs, who comes up in story time, tails a fair bit doing the business. McKibben with work to do. There's an opener named Harold Steele who goes after him, knocks up a catch. And then the first drop is a guy called Frank Sugg, who's pretty experienced, knows how to wallop the ball, gets a half tracker, whacks it for 4, gets a wide ball, and you can basically read his thought process through the years. He goes, here's this guy who's loose. He's just bowled me a shit short ball that I pumped for 4. He's just bowled me an absolute dross wide delivery, too wide to even bother with. I'll leave it alone. Shoulders, arms, and the thing turns back in like 2.5 feet and bowls him. And, crowd in disarray. Like, how the hell is this guy doing it? So Hugh Trumbull chips in with a couple, celebrity racist Archie McLaren among them. And then Tom McKibben takes 4 more in quick time, including a hat-trick, bowls out Lancashire for 62. Australia make 180 more. They lead by 246. Late on day 2, he's bowling again, Tom McKibben. Rips the ball back from outside off stump to bowl the opener, who he got out in the first innings, then bowl the night watchman, the wicketkeeper, who's come out to knock the ball on the head and can't do it. He's on a hat-trick for the second time in the game. He gets the same guy, Frank Sugg, who comes forward, inside edge, into the pad, pops up in the air and just carries the bowler's head. He jumps back to try to catch it and can't take it. So he's almost got his second hat-trick in the game. They resume on day 3, 8 wickets in hand, Lancashire needing to try to bat out a draw. They're all out inside 45 minutes. So he does Archie McLaren with the signature ball that turns back in. 3 stumpings and a return catch to follow, 10.3 overs, 7 for 11. The McKibben analysis, 7-11's got it. Lancashire all out for 28 runs inside 22 overs. So 6 in the first, 7 in the second. That's the 13 for 38. Goes on to take a few more bags, goes through the US on the way home, plays on that little side trip to the USA where he, of course, plays the Gentlemen of Philadelphia, takes 5 for against them, plays a team in Chicago where Tom McKibben doesn't even get a bowl in the first innings, and in the second dig, he takes 9 for 29.
That's their Ishmael Khan energy.
Yeah.
Speaking of that,
being made to wait. He plays a California team, takes 6 for 20.
Oh, I wonder if
comes home.
Is there a California state team now?
I hope so.
Well, I want to play. We want to tour there when the Olympics are on. ODB, that is, to play the Californian state team. Bring it on.
Mm-hmm.
Love
that. The bear on the flag.
Does Hollywood Cricket Club still exist? The one that we've talked about in the past, I wonder.
The one that Aubrey Smith was.
Yes, it's good.
Running.
Good recollection from you. That's homework for me.
Yeah, we'll look into it. The Shield season when he gets home, still running hot, takes 15 wickets in a match against South Australia, 13 wickets in a match against Victoria, sets the Shield record that season. He takes 44 in just the state games, and that record stands for a while, I think. Couple more Shield seasons still.
Doesn't it stand for ages? I feel like the 44 Shield record was there until like Funky Miller or something. I feel like that was one of those records that lasted the test of. I don't know why.
Someone
in my head as being a long
60.
term.
I think it's broken by a long way. Someone takes 60 wickets in 6 games, but I can't remember who it is.
Okay.
Someone really cleaned up.
Fleetwood Smith. Fleetwood Smith might have done that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It
really might be Chuck.
Yeah.
So a couple more good Shield seasons. Look, and his numbers are still great. He plays 2 tests in a belting of England when they come out and they lose 4-1 and does okay in those as well. The last match of the 1899 season is Australia versus the Rest. He's in the Rest team at this point, which is interesting in and of itself. He's in that team with some greats who he toured with earlier, like Giffen and Charles Eadie. Arthur Conningham's in that team. Affy Jarvis, the sexy wicketkeeper, is in that team. Victor Trumper's in that team. And then that's that. End of that season, he goes, no, I'm good. Had enough of cricket. I'm going to go back to the country, make an honest living. He does a few different things. He spent some time gold prospecting out west. He travels New South Wales helping to train people and install the shearing machines that are the newfangled thing to replace hand shearing, where he's working for an engineering company. And he ends up at a place called Macquarie Plains Homestead at a farm, a big agricultural enterprise with his brother, and lives out his life there where he started in Western New South Wales, dies at a reasonable old age. I think he's late 60s when he gives it away. The quote in his obit says, "Many old comrades will miss the stocky figure and the thick moustache of this genial sort who had a fund of humorous anecdotes." So it wasn't that he cracked the shits with cricket and didn't want any part of it. He apparently still followed the game keenly. He just went, I think I'm good. I think I've done my bit. But a couple of the quotes from other people about him are extraordinary. You take 3 Australian Test players, Tom Horan, Tom Garrett, Frank Iredale. The first 2 both played in the first Test match in 1877. Iredale's a bit younger. He's a teammate on that England tour in 1896. So Frank Iredale said, quote, sort of paraphrasing, that Tom McKibben's best ball, the one that he put the most work on, was literally impossible to play. He said it turned so much that nobody could possibly play it. Tom Horan said that McKibben could do more on a flat pitch than any bowler he'd seen in his life. And Tom Horan watched a lot of cricket. And Tom Garrett, who was the New South Wales skipper who captained McKibben, said that he was the best Australian bowler after Spofford. Like, these are huge calls for a guy who played 5 years of state cricket and then just went, I'm happy with that. I've done my bit. He was a miracle of sorts, and he's the one who just decided to give it away.
There you go. The fact that you've mentioned he was a stocky fella, your description, I wonder whether he's related to, like, whether he's a predecessor of Warwick McKibben, who was long-term RBA board member, who after his time on the bank board did some good stuff on climate change as well. He was appointed by Howard, but yeah, I wonder whether McKibben's not a particularly, and Warwick McKibben, without denigrating him, is a stocky fella as well. I don't know.
He's recorded as having been survived by a wife. I don't remember if there was a mention of kids.
Okay,
but there may have been.
Well, there you go. Who's to know? Well, that's a great first answer, Jeff.
Tom McKibben.
It's Tom McKibben, and he took 13 for 38 in a first-class game, which Lucas Colley has given us the opportunity to tell you about today. Patreon.com/The Final Word is where you become like Lucas and join our crew, and that's what underpins everything that we do on the program. We thank you all immeasurably for that. As we drift towards the first break, which I think we should probably take now, Jeff.
Let's do it. We'll give ourselves time to relax. But we have to tell you about half-price Wisdons first.
I was going to say, if you are paying full price for your Wisdom Cricketers Almanac in this day and age, you are off your tree. I support you. I support you in supporting the great book, but there is also a possibility of doing something else if you don't wish to spend that much money. You be a maniac, because you can get it so much cheaper by being a subscriber. And who wouldn't want to be a subscriber to the Wisdom Cricketers Almanac? And it's not hard to do. wisdomalmanac.com/subscribe. 50% off the recommended retail price. This isn't the room where I keep my wisdoms. I'm pretty sure it's like 55 quid on the sticker. Yeah, it's not a cheap book, nor should it be. There's 1 million bloody words in it. 1 million words.
Yeah.
About 1,250 pages. It should cost a lot of money. But if you're a subscriber, you demonstrate your longer term want to be involved. It's like anything. So therefore, they give you that 50% off. wisdomalmanac.com/subscribe. There are exclusive perks for subscribers, including a site-wide 35% discount on bloomsbury.com. So that's kids, cookery, non-fiction, fiction, any number of cricket books that we talked about on the program as well. And great discounts on the Night Watchman and the Wisdom Cricket Monthly magazine that you know all about if you're a long-term listener to The Final Word. And the Night Watchman, which is the Wisdom Almanac, it's like the quarterly. which is a terrific publication as well. I can recommend from a couple of editions ago, Patrick Hargraves, patron of the show, friend of the show, teammate of mine, Strappy, who wrote a piece about Guyana and oil and politics in that part of the world and Venezuela, and was most insightful. And he had the space to write like 5,000 words on it because that's the Night Watchman. And that's the sort of thing you get in the Wisden world. wisdenalmanac.com/subscribe. Do that and continue to support the great and the good of cricket writing and all the rest. We're going to take a breather, I think. Yeah. And when we return, it'll be my turn.
It's the final word.
Sorry. Bananas.
It's the final word. It's story time 228.
Ray Lindwall's number of test wickets.
Was it? Very good. I like that.
Yeah.
That's good. It's a nice sounding number. It's a nice sounding number of test wickets, certainly reflects a strong career. Somebody else with a strong career are the people who work at Odin Mortgage Tax, who are supporting this show, who can help you to have your tax affairs sorted out. ATO time is coming up. Australian returns need to be filed in a few days. It might even be on the day or on the Monday after this show comes out, which reminds me that I need to attend to certain affairs. And if you haven't attended to your affairs, if you are an Australian living overseas, particularly, that's their specialty, is making sure that you are compliant with all of the tax things you need to be compliant with, and to make sure that you're paying the right amounts for the right things. They can also give you advice on mortgages if you are the kind of person who's having to coordinate one of those internationally, because it's complicated working across multiple jurisdictions.
Yeah, for a time I was managing like the two country dance, and it's not fun. It's not a pleasurable experience. So having someone there for you, especially if you're the type of person who is spending time away. I've got a buddy I talk to a little bit over here whose son is in the same class as my daughter. And he occasionally talks about when they go back to Australia at some point. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it may not be the case for me, but if you're doing that, it can be a really long run up, and you need to know like what you're going to do on the other side of that move back, not least when there's other people and dependents involved. And Odin Mortgage and Tax have helped people just like you if you're in that boat. 2,000 people, more than that, in over 40 countries. So no matter where you are around the world, as an Aussie expat, Odin Mortgage and Tax are there for you. Great to have them partnering with us here on the podcast at the moment. Jeff, it's my turn, isn't it?
It is your turn. It's Sam Burt, another new pledger. Welcome to you, Sam. $5.49. It's another AUD number. A low ebb in Australian cricket, Sam says, coincided with my first in-person test. A diamond duck meant I missed the first wicket.
Indeed, yes. Indeed it did. When you, if you might already immediately know what is going to come here for Sam Burt. So
I had a pretty good guess, although we'll see if it's what you landed on.
Although whether the number lines up, that took a bit more work. But 5 for 49, if you're wondering, that feels like bowling figures. That's what Lyon took in the Cape Town tests that came up recently when referring to his 300th test wicket, although obviously not the first wicket, and this clue suggests first wicket.
Hard for a diamond duck. He would have had to bowl the first over and get someone stumped off a wide.
Yeah, which, good question. How that could.
It's the only way he could take a wicket that was a diamond duck.
Yeah, with his first ball, I suppose it'd be run-out connotations as well. Now, the diamond duck recognises a wicket where someone has been run out without scoring, without facing a ball.
Or dismissed, but stumped off a wide for naught. His first ball is still a diamond.
Yeah. Oh, right. I've never, okay, that's fair enough. I've never. Well, don't you get your ball? You don't get the ball counted. Do you?
The wide doesn't count. The no ball counts. There's a ball faced, but the wide doesn't.
I guess I've never really thought of it in those terms. I've only ever thought about it as someone being run out before facing, which has happened to me. Happened to me in 2012. I was playing a game for Hampstead, and Bebe Miyagi, what a great name. Bonsoir Bebe when he was bowling. Played for Japan. And Bebe ran me out. I think he listens occasionally. Hello, if you are there. So I do know what it feels like, and it happened to Simon Kadich at Adelaide in 2010.
You should remember the Anna Lanning sequence. Remember the back-to-back diamonds in the WBBL season. She got run out non-strikers, and then she got stumped off a wide first ball in her next innings. She made two diamond ducks in a row.
That does ring a bell.
Sister of,
and former White Line Wireless alumnus. Anna Lanning,
and
who
Final
commentated
Word co-host in
Final Word
season one.
co-host in season one. She commentated on Whiteline Wireless when Australia got beaten in the World Cup final in 2016. And was more strident in her criticism of the Aussie team than any of us, despite the fact that her sister was leading the Aussies. She was great value. Right, so Adelaide 2010. This is the Test match in question, where it'll make sense to you why it's 5:49 later. I've got some interesting and exciting and quite strong memories of that week and that Test match. I was there, however, I wasn't there for the first ball. It was a Friday, the first day.
You talked to us recently about being there for Pearson.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Which will come up in a bit. But I missed the first day. I was trying to go to at least one day of every test in that series. I don't know why. Just a thing I wanted to do. Ashes series. Why wouldn't I go to at least one day? Brisbane, I did that on the fourth day when Cook and Strauss and Trott batted for a very long time in the second innings to make 600 plus and bat Australia out of the Test match. That was the day after the state election in Victoria, where the state government was going to lose. Like, there was no doubt that John Brumby was going to lose his majority. And I rocked up to the Gabba, and I think we can probably laugh about this now. Probably.
Baillieu? Ted Baillieu?
Yep, Ted Baillieu, Cotties, won that election. Thick and rich. So the next day, rocking up at the Gabba and getting into a screaming match with Swanee, my boss at the time, out the front of the gate, that wouldn't have been good had a journalist seen it. That wouldn't have been ideal for Deputy PM and Press Sec absolutely duking it out in the street on Vulture Street. I don't know what it was about. We were both very cross, it would seem. Anyway, we patched it up as we tended to do. So I remember that day at Brisbane for that reason mostly. Then the Adelaide Test match, being late for the airport. You never want to be late for a flight. To stick with the political theme, John Howard's 2 lessons to longevity: never skip a meal and never be late for a flight. Words to live by from J.W. Howard. And on this occasion, I had not honoured part 2. I was running very late for a Friday afternoon flight. And as you know, Jeff, trying to navigate through traffic in Sydney is a nightmare at the best of times. This was not the best of times, the close of business Friday. So ended up just making it to the airport. They let me check onto the plane or take as hand luggage, an embarrassing amount of luggage. They basically just waved me through, and all's well that ends well, and got over there, and so be it. But earlier in the day, the start of the Test match, which is what Sam's referring to. I was watching with Wayne in the CPO in Sydney, and my colleague AT. We were watching as you do, huddle around a television, watch the start of an Ashes Test match. A very relatable sort of workplace experience. It wasn't unusual for us to watch cricket together in that office, and as most people by this point would know, there is a stunning diamond duck in that first over. Now, this is where poor old Watto, who had a bit of a habit of getting into run-outs with Simon Katich from the previous summer. And I loved Kat way back, but I was there for that 100 he made in Sydney in 2005. Start of 2004, his first 100. And I had mates that would always give me shit about how much I talked up Kat. I remembered Rod Marsh and the comment that he made in the mid-90s about Katich one day being an Australian captain. And that stuck in my brain. And I always stood by the fact that he would come good and be a star for Australia. And by this point, he had been, from 2008 when he made those 4 centuries, carried his bat in Brisbane, had a record that was as good as anyone in world cricket, at the top of the list through 2008 through to where we are here in the November of 2010. And at 4th ball of this Test match, Watto was facing James Anderson. The ball kind of deviated off his thigh pad, ballooned in the air. There wasn't one there. They decided to go in Prowse Jonathan Trott, not really known for his dynamic fielding, but there he was, hauling ass from mid-wicket, collect, throw, bang. Katich is caught short, and from the 4th ball of a Test match, run out for a diamond duck. And that set the tone of a crazy morning. The next ball, Ricky Ponting walks out. Anderson bowls one of his best deliveries in Test cricket, probably, when you consider the context, first over of an Ashes Test. England had started the series well. They'd won a couple of tour games and drew the other, but they drew at Brisbane. They didn't win the Test at Brisbane. So it all counts for nothing if Australia bounced back at Adelaide. And Australia didn't bat poorly at Brisbane either. So getting the chance to win the toss and bat first at Adelaide, notoriously a sort of 500 plus on day one kind of place, especially before the drop-ins, and we're pre-drop-ins here well and truly before day-night test cricket. I think there was a sequence of 10 years before the drop-ins where the average first innings score there was 550 or something ridiculous. And so Australia walking out morning one of that test, the pressure is actually on England. The run out from Trot.
Yeah, I think so. I reckon there's some Monday quarterbacking about this series that England were on top because, so in a way, escaping from the Gabba without having lost was a big win because teams tended to go there and lose. So that was a big deal, but it was also so flat in the way that some of those Gabba pitches could be. And I think the way that Ponting bats out the end, like there are no alarms for Australia at the end of that Brisbane game. And it's like they're just underlining this is flat as fuck. Like you guys might have made 500 for one on it, but nobody's getting anybody out on it. So there was still that sense that, okay, and if Australia have batted well in Brisbane and they go to Adelaide and they bat first, then like you say, big score, first innings is...
It changes the vibe of the whole series, right?
Yeah.
And that's why this becomes such an important passage of play for England in the context of not only the test match, but the series and the tour at large. So Anderson has them 2 for none inside the first over. I know people who were there that day who still talk about what a stunning experience it was standing on the hill with the Barmy Army reading the scoreboard behind them and in disbelief that Ricky Ponting had been caught behind. Oh, not caught behind, sorry. It was caught by Graham Swan at third slip. An absolute beauty from Anderson. And then the first ball of his second over, so the third over of the test match, gets Clark in almost identical circumstances, also caught at third slip. Australia are 3 for 2 or 2 for 3, depending on how you want to read the scoreboard, but 3 wickets and 2 runs on that board. And it is Australia reeling. Now, thankfully, Mike Hussey made a day of it for the Aussies and got 93. One of his best test innings, I think, Mike Hussey, to repel that pressure, to get through to lunch. He had Brad Haddon for company after they were 5 down for not many as well. That was a sign of things to come 3 years later with Haddon coming in at 5 for not enough in all 5 test matches in the first innings. They somehow batted into the 86th over to reach 245. Hussey had batted for nearly 300 minutes. And Jimmy had claimed a 4-wicket bag. So that's the day, and clearly that's the diamond duck that Sam Burt's referring to. To broaden out here and talk about the test match itself, then into the next day rather, it was so hot. So I'd arrived, gone out on the Friday night, got there on the Saturday morning. It was insanely hot. Now, it reminded me of like that Look Both Ways heat in that lovely movie that William McInnes and his late wife directed. It represents an Adelaide weekend where it is scorching hot and so much takes place. I remember at the time sort of thinking that, wow, this is desert-like conditions. It was the first time I'd sat in the members. So this was back in my era of going to the Adelaide Test match every year. In 2006, 2007, the Ashes Test match then, I'd stood on the hill for 4.5 days or whatever it was with my mate Ken McAlpine, he and I had both signed up to become members at Adelaide Oval. And by this point, we both were. Shout out to Kenny, who's had a few health issues recently. Great man. And he and me and Clemo, who's been a great supporter and friend of the show, and any number of others who came over from Canberra. I remember Alex Hart was over there, Kieran Gilbert, a couple of gallery journos. Everyone was in the members in Adelaide, but it was steaming hot and the fans were whirring on the roof, which is a weird thing to have, right? A fan on the roof of a grandstand, but such is the climate in Adelaide that sometimes you need any respite you can get. And the Giant fans provided some of that. On this second day, Doug Bollinger did get Andrew Strauss out in the second over, I think it was, shouldering arms. Bollinger was brought in after Brisbane to replace Mitchell Johnson.
This is the Doug the Rug hotspot test, isn't it?
It might be.
When the hair, the hair extensions are glowing on the heat camera.
I went back to watch the highlights of the test when preparing this answer, and his hair is in full flow.
Yeah.
So it's most likely when the rug was,
baking, the polymer baking in the heat.
Yeah, the earlier technology. You wouldn't see that with them these days, where so much effort goes into rehabilitating some of the athletes' hair. Anyway, 90 for 1 at lunch, and then Cook and Trot are ticking over. They're 198 for 2 by T. I remember watching Jonathan Trott bat that day, and I might have tweeted it, who knows, thinking he was the biggest lock for 100 I'd ever seen. He did not miss a ball, and he was eventually out for 78. He chipped one to mid-wicket, and I was stunned by that. Enter Kevin Peterson, and he put the foot down before stumps, reaching 85. Cook was already beyond 100 again, 317 for 2 by stumps. And this this overnight was when I think Australian fans then had clocked, oh fuck, this is a huge problem. Peterson's flying. This Cook bloke's made 200s in two hits on tour. They're already ahead. And there is another hot, steamy day to come on the Sunday, and it only did get worse for Australia. He reaches his 100 with a step across. Well, chip wasn't it to finally, but he had this step across to Bollinger, which was complete contempt. Increasingly dismissive of Xavier Doherty, who was playing his second test of the series. He hit a shot inside out off him into the hill, then played a standing sweep off him to reach 150. A quick single as well off Doherty to get to 200, and he was on his knees celebrating, like that sort of like triumphant warrior style double hundred celebration from Kevin Peterson. And he celebrated it yet further by launching Xavier Doherty over his head a couple more times in that same over. So it was absolutely brutal. Rain stopped play at 551 for 4.
Thunderstorm?
It was a huge thunderstorm, but we stuck with it. We stayed at Adelaide Oval for a number of hours having a few beers. There's some photos of Clemo and me with some old boys, I mean, like in their 60s or 70s, and one of them I've got my tongue in his ear, Nerd View style, which Clemo burst out from time to time. We were enjoying ourselves. My mate Adele was with us.
Best thing that had happened to him for 30 years.
Yeah, my mate Adele Neary, who sometimes listens to this show as well, I'm pretty sure, and her husband Matt. And Adele was there as well, and she's in those pictures with us. And I remember we went and saw John Harms after play in the pub, as you know, Adelaide. John Harms at every test match. I think he was doing a footy almanac thing or something, but we saw him after play as well. He usually is, very Harmsy kind of energy. Before I fell asleep on Clemo's balcony and missed my flight back to Canberra the next morning. So I woke up with mozzie bites all over my ankles, as you do, and had to hustle to get back to work a little bit later than would have otherwise been the case. Anyway, play continued at Adelaide Oval. KP got to 227, which we should have mentioned last week in more depth. His high score in Test cricket.
That's why it came up. It was the episode number.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense now. Yeah. They declared it 620 for 4. Australia did dig in the second innings. They batted for 99 overs, and they were laying a bit of a foundation to maybe bat the Test out. Hussey another 50, Watto a 50. Poor old Cat batting with a torn Achilles tendon, bats for like 3 hours, gets to 43, and then he's finally dismissed. He's caught behind by Graham Swan. Ended up being his final Test innings for reasons that we know well, that he was injured out of the series, and then of course he lost his Cricket Australia contracts thanks to Michael Clarke a little bit later in 2011. But speaking of Clarke, that moment on day 4 ultimately meant that Australia were not going to win. They were 238 for 3. Clarke's out at short leg to none other than Kevin Peterson's bowling round the wicket. I seem to recall it being ballooning up off a glove or an inside edge. He was trying to hoik him away, caught by Alistair Cook, and that's what ended day 4, and they wrapped it up pretty quickly on day 5. But there was another thunderstorm on day 5, which was like an hour after England had won. So had Clarke made it to day 5, it's often been said, retrospectively, that who knows, they might have had enough gas to have got to the finish line and batted out for a second draw. But it wasn't to be. Ultimately, and this is our number, they were dismissed for 549 runs collectively in the Test match after that diamond duck and after that shocking start with 2 wickets in the first over. The series continued in Perth the next week. I went over there and sat in the Inverarity stand, which used to bake you. There was no roof on the Inverarity stand. Went with my mate Casey and Sonny Munn, Jeff, you know Sonny. That's the first time I spent time with Sonny, and we stayed at his brother's place, and that was a top weekend as well. And of course, Melbourne, where they got turned over after that extraordinary Boxing Day, where they were bowled out for 98 and beaten inside 4 days. And off to Sydney to watch Usman Khawaja make his Test debut, where Reece Muldoon and I ran down to give him a pat on the bum as he walked out the race. We're like, it's important. We should go and give him a pat on the ass, when he's running down from the members, and watching all of that Test with Reece and Steve Kinane has been another important person in my final word world. Of course, Reece did our live shows this year, and Steve's been a wonderful guest, both on Book Club a couple of times. He's hosted Book Club on the final word and been on there and been a guest when talking about his investigations into Bet365. And
turned out against us, played against us at Birdsgrove last January.
Birdsgrove. He's played. He played with me in my Stag Do game, and Steve's been lots of games for the Authors as well, who I'm playing for tomorrow. So a big part of my life, and I think about that 10-11 series, and I suppose why I'm dropping all this personal stuff in is it was a bad series for Australian cricket, losing 3 test matches by an innings. But I have a lot of great personal fond memories of going around the country and watching all 5 Ashes test matches in what would prove to be the final series where Australia played England in Australia, where I wasn't working in some capacity. So, yeah, it's a nice capping of my fandom before not that I was much of an Aussie fan, but, me going as a punter compared to now the privilege of getting to go in a commentary or journalistic capacity.
Dare we say there is even a lesson in there that you will have a more enjoyable life if you enjoy the sport and the friends you get to spend time with while you watch it rather than getting too invested in the result. Indeed. Would that be a crazy?
Honestly,
takeaway?
I don't think I don't think anyone out of my. Of course, people cared about there was an element of fascination in what was going on, more than hand wringing at the time. A lot of hand wringing in media circles, as you can expect, reflecting some of the public mood. But it's this is quite interesting. How is this Australian team been defeated this way at home? It was watching watching an exhibition or something. How did we get to this end point? And of course the Argus review followed, and further hand wringing, and a couple of years in the doldrums before Australia kind of got their shit together again. And these days are a very strong side at that test level. Very good. That is the number. Except you haven't told me what the 5. What was the number? 549. 549. What's 549? That was the collective innings, Australia's 2 innings together. Oh, was it? Yeah, I mentioned it before, so all good. All good. I must have missed that. That's fine. Add them together. All right, that's good. That's clever. I like that. I've been a little bit clever, maybe too clever with this next one, because I've decided this is a double header. We've got a couple of exotic currencies. We've got David Seaton in the Swedish krona. Are they krona? I assume they definitely are. Yep. And we've got Alan Edgar in the Hungarian forints. How appropriate, being when this goes out, it'll be, I think, it'll be Friday, won't it? I was going to say Eurovision Day. It'll be the day before the Eurovision Song Contest. So having 2 types of European currency, especially Swedish krona, being the winningest Eurovision nation in the 21st century. And Alan, who, I don't know, I'll probably see him on Saturday night. It tends to be the way. I'll see him somewhere. See him most weekends. Here in the Hungarian, what'd you say? Forint. I think it's a forint. We've had that before, haven't we? Yeah. We've had a few because it lets you get to big numbers without spending the commensurate amount of money. So David's got 101 krona. Alan's got 1,010 forints. But I just decided, since they were 1,0,1,0,0,1 kind of stuff, I'm going to treat this as a double header. David did have a clue where he said you can play with the decimal point, but don't lose the 2 trailing zeros. The currency is not a clue. I just live in Sweden. Fair enough. But the trailing zeros was what really got me onto this train of thought, where I was thinking ones and zeros, zeros and ones, binary brothers, computer code. And I was thinking about one that leads to 0. And I started thinking about people who play a match in which 0 things happen. I started thinking about the TFC, Adam. Thanks for coming. Okay. Because we talk about the TFC a lot. It comes up. We mention it on the show. We did the whole running segment on Jody Hicks for years with the many TFCs for the Sydney Sixers. We had a patron TFC on Sunday. Tom Cooper TFC'd in our game. Took a catch up at point, but he didn't get a hit, sadly, because we won 3 down. Not the South Australian. No. Our Tom Cooper. No. Our Tom Cooper, who I think it'd be pretty stiff if you didn't give that Tom Cooper a hit. No, you'll be taking the fields with. This is Tom Cooper. Tom Cooper's driven you home after that. After 86 TV's gig a couple of years ago. But yeah, he TFC'd, and he's part of our Final Word community. So that's and he's played for the Final Word a number of times before. Yeah, and we've talked about the TFC enough that we had a nerd pledge at one point, which led us to Thelma Mackenzie, who played a test match for the Australian women's team in 1948, which was a TFC in which Thelma was a wicketkeeper at state level, didn't get to keep wicket in this game. Lorna Larter had the gloves. That's the game where Betty Wilson makes 90 on debut. Una Paisley makes 100. They make New Zealand follow on, bowl them out twice. And so Thelma doesn't get a hit, doesn't get a jam roll. But it just occurred to me that I don't think we've ever looked at how many players have TFC'd overall in Test cricket. I don't think we've ever gone down that road. No. And so I was interested in,
how much of the time does this happen? Now, if you run a stats filter with players who DNB with the bat, DNB with the ball and didn't take a catch, you'll pull up 6 players who did all that but still affected at least one stumping. So there are some wicket keepers who didn't take a catch but did get a stumping.
So just to be clear, you're saying that if someone took a catch, we're disqualifying.
If you take a catch, that's not a TFC.
Okay, fine. I usually
if you take a catch, you're on the scorecard.
Yeah, I'm usually yeah, totally fair. I'm normally counting it as you don't get a hit and don't get a bowl. But you're right. If you're a wicket keeper and you're affected dismissal, or
yeah. If you might take the screamer for the last wicket with a run to win, you might be the match winner, right? You've still done
played
something.
Yeah.
And it's harder to track run outs because I think if you affected a run out, you've still contributed, although those weren't recorded on the card for a long time. So there are 6 players who did get at least a stumping but didn't take a catch. Vijay Rajendranath for India had 4 stumpings and no catches in his only test in 1952. But I also don't think you can count wicket keepers for a TFC. I think if you're keeping wicket, that's a job.
That's a good question.
You've still got to do the job.
I had a mate who kept wicket the other week and didn't bat, and he described it as a TFC to me.
No,
listening.
I think if you're a keeper, you already have a job when the game starts.
Yeah, I'm just sort of I'm kind of considering it. Like if you're a keeper who doesn't bat, that happens quite a bit. So probably
a genuine TFC means you're grazing at like long leg for the whole game. It's boring. You have a shit time. A wicketkeeper doesn't have to suffer that because a wicketkeeper's up in the action.
You're in the game. You're in the game.
Yeah. You're involved. You're touching the ball more than like 3 times in 50 overs.
Yeah.
When somebody gets one off the hip and finally you get to throw a ball in. So I excluded wicket keepers. And what you end up with at that point is 221 entries, but most of these are weather dependent. Most of these are games where you got 40 overs on day 3 and the rest of it got washed out.
Right? Is he going to have to filter to a minimum number of overs bowled in a game or a result possibly?
Well, it's hard to do because you've got to filter by players and then it's hard to include match characteristics on that. So basically I figured I was running out of time to hand sort through all of the draws to work out which were genuine draws that had quite a bit of play and ended up as a draw versus which were weather draws. I will do that because I'm that kind of personality, but I haven't done that yet. What I decided to do instead was look for TFC characteristics in either a win or a loss in Test cricket. So this is where I've landed with so far. There are 11 players who recorded one in a loss who fitted my characteristics, my criteria of not being keepers and so on, but all of them for the batting part of the equation at least were either a substitute or they're listed as absent. Therefore, they were injured early. So probably injured fielding in the first innings and subsequently didn't bat. And again, I don't think that counts as a proper TFC. Good proper TFC, you've got to be available for the whole match and not used.
So to be clear, so is it possible to be in a loss and not bat? If it's a test 2 innings match, I suppose you've got to declare twice.
I suppose, you would need to declare declaration. Twice. You'd need to be declared on, which interesting.
But there have been 2 declaration losses in Test cricket, right? So
yes,
it's a very.
In fact,
rare...
we're going to talk about one in my next answer.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say though. Like
there are double declaration defeats where a player doesn't bat, or you could be absent in the first innings and bat in the second innings, something like that, or vice versa, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But you could be available to bat and not used in the first innings and then be injured for the second innings.
What would be interesting? It would be more. It would be easier to achieve it where you're batting. Well, Nathan Lyon had one a couple of years ago, didn't he? Nathan Lyon had one down in Hobart where Australia bat. Oh no, he batted. My apologies. He hit 4 sixes, didn't he? What am I saying? He didn't bowl in a test match at Hobart a few years ago. But
yes,
you can imagine a scenario where a team has made a fuckload of runs and you're scheduled to bat at 6, and you've declared and you've made the team follow on, and you've not too dissimilar to that match, Warwickshire Surrey that we talked about on the weekly show where they were 660 for 5 or something. You could see a world where the number 8, well, it's unusual to be a specialist bat at number 8, isn't it? There are ways.
Well, that's what happens to Thelma McKenzie. Australia make a bunch. They make 400 or whatever for 3, I think, and she's listed at 6, so she doesn't bat.
Okay.
And subsequently they enforce a follow-on, bowl them out twice in a row.
Okay.
So that's the most common method of getting the TFC where you're available for the whole game. You're a non-bowler and the team only bats once. So it would be possible to have one in a loss, but all of the ones in losses were for players who were absent with some sort of injury or illness. So then I looked at the players who had won. So players who've got TFCs in wins. And there are a handful of these. There are possibly more than you might think. I don't know. I wonder what people's sort of instinct on this would be. If you look at women's cricket, you've got Thelma Mackenzie, and then allegedly, according to the stats archives, according to the list that you go through, you've got 3 West Indies players from 1976. You've got Beverly Brown, you've got Yolanda Geddes Hall, and you've got Menota Tika. And these 3 are all recorded as not having batted or bowled in a women's test in India when they played that 6-match series, that remarkable 6-test series in 1976. But this is not the case. The problem is that the scorecard's incomplete. So the cards for this series were not meticulously kept. They were largely pieced together, Hypercourse tells me, from newspaper reports, from being able to sort of retrospectively build a card. And so both of the Indian innings have been able to be rebuilt retrospectively. They were bowled out pretty cheaply both times and lost the test, but in between times West Indies batted. They made 210 for 8 and declared, so everybody batted bar the number 11, but only the first 4 batters' scores are recorded, and after that there was no way to record what had happened. So they're listed, and this is one of the big errors in Cricinfo databases, particularly with women's cricket, is it often gives you errors because it doesn't have the information on hand. So according to Cricinfo, they didn't bat, but they did. They must have batted. All of them were middle order players. All of them played top 6 in the other test matches that they played on that tour. So there's no way any of them was batting 11. They were available, they would have batted, but their scores aren't recorded. So Thelma Mackenzie is the only woman in all of women's test cricket to record a proper TFC, in a win at least. There might be a couple in the draws that I haven't dug out. Then if you look at the men's game, only a handful. So you exclude your wicket keepers, you end up with 18 in total. And then you start getting rid of the ones I was talking about getting rid of in terms of injuries or substitutions. So Temba Bavuma recently against India, hamstring injury, first innings, misses the rest of the game, doesn't bat either time. You've got a few substitute ones, Jack Leach concussing himself, fielding, getting subbed out before he'd bowled. You've got a couple of the South Africans who came in as COVID substitutes, if you remember, but they came in during the 4th innings while they were fielding. So, that was late. I think it was, I'm trying to remember who got subbed out. Cyril Irvia, perhaps, and somebody else.
Who retired this week, Irvia.
Oh, yeah.
He finished up as a professional cricketer. It probably deserved a brief mention. It gets it here.
Well, one before that you would remember, in 93, Lords, Craig McDermott, who ends up in hospital.
Oh, yeah.
With the twisted bowel.
Twisted bowel, yeah. What a weird...
One of the worst phrases in the English language, twisted bowel.
Gosh. He was very ill, wasn't he? He ended up being dealt with quite seriously when he reached hospital, didn't he? In the 93 Lords Test. I mean, they were so far ahead in the game, didn't they? Again, that's an example of where Australia was 700 odd for 5 when they declared early on morning 3.
I remember a kid at school going missing for a few weeks with it turned out he had a twisted testicle. And every time the phrase was said, everybody went, oh. It was some phrases have a physical effect. So Craig McDermott, I'm leaving out because he gets ill early in the game. And then you've got the weird case of Bill Johnston, as in the 1950s, Bill Johnston, whose last 2 test matches consecutively are TFCs.
Oh, right.
In the West Indies. He plays the 3rd test, does his knee fielding early in the game, has to go off, can't bowl, can't bat. Misses like a month. The tour's a long tour. Gets fit, comes back for the 5th test, does his knee again, fielding, gets stretchered off, and never played again.
Oh.
Didn't bat, didn't bowl in either of his last 2 test matches.
There you go.
He's the only one on the list twice. But Bill Johnston I'm not going to count him as a TFC either because he wasn't available for the whole match.
Yeah, well, how often, as we say, when something happens once, the frequency that we see it happen twice in our, it's rare that it'll happen a couple of times. Well, there you go. One bloke two times in a series.
So the ones I'm counting, Travis Head, when David Warner made the triple ton at Adelaide Oval, not required to bat. didn't bowl. Adil Rashid at Lords in 2018 when the Seamers dominated India, not required to bowl. Seamers bowled out India cheaply both times. Jacques Rudolph for South Africa at the Oval when Hashim Amla made the triple. Jacques Rudolph wasn't required to bat and didn't bowl for the most part. Gareth Batty was the spinner at Lords in 05 against Bangladesh when the Seamers did the job and spin was not required. Ashwell Prince in the Cape Town game against Zimbabwe when South Africa won in 2 days, if you remember that one. So didn't need too many runs because they bowled them out so cheaply first up. Neil McKenzie, similar thing for South Africa in Chattogram. Lisa needs braces against Bangladesh. An interesting one, a player called Asif Mujtaba, who's got a really interesting story that I'd like to tell one day, who played in Wellington in 94. So they had a night watchman which pushed him down the order. And then Inzamam and Salim Malik had a huge partnership and set up an innings win. But he had an interesting career, Asif Mujtaba. He was supposed to be
something happened to him.
Thing.
Something happened to him, didn't there? There's a story with him that I just can't put my hit Steve Waugh for 6 last ball.
He hits the 16 off the over.
Bang.
Off Steve Waugh.
Steve Waugh last ball 6. There you go. I knew it was somewhere in there, so I had to find it.
Yeah, 10 off the first 5 balls as well. So, nobody hit 16 off and over in those days. He made a ton on Test debut, I think, and then was supposed to be amazing. He's got an incredible first-class record, and it just didn't quite translate to Test cricket. And then only a couple more. There's a couple of Indian players in the same Test, Kripal Singh and Nari Contractor, in the game when Vinu Mankad and Pankaj Roy put on 400 for the opening wicket. They were not required in the middle order and only needed to bat once. And then you've got Brian Valentine for England against South Africa in 1939, which he often batted 7 because Les Ames would bat in the top 6 as a keeper, which was unusual. They had a big first innings and then enforced the follow-on. Eddie Painter made a double ton, won by an innings. These are all wins by an innings. And the very first one is Percy Chapman, who's not yet skipper in 1924 under Gilligan. Sutcliffe and Hobbs go massive opening the batting, and again, innings win. And he wasn't much of a bowler. So those are the only instances I've got in wins, at least, is 11 genuine TFCs in the men's game. Thelma McKenzie in the women. But the thing about those 11 is they all got those TFCs in more extensive Test careers. So Thelma McKenzie is the only player to have a TFC, men or women, in her only Test match because she never played again.
Like Roy Park, 1 ball and all that. Can you just remind me how this relates to
ones and zeros, playing one game with zero stats.
Not the twisted testicle. 101-0. Oh, I see. So 101-0-0 for that.
One game, 0 anything else. That's what I went for. It won't be the correct answer, but it was too interesting to not go down the rabbit hole, and here we are.
I'm sure David and Alan will both appreciate that. Jeff, my last answer. I'm not blessed with loads of time.
We've got to have a break.
We do have to take a break, do we? Are we at that point of the show?
We're at break time.
Too right we are. We'll return in a sec. This is story time 228. If you want these cool sunglasses, look in our show notes. They're very good. I was just running in them before. Not this particular pair. These are the casual ones from T20 Vision, but I was running in the ones I bowl in, which are excellent. They're called the T20 Ultimates, and they are as good as anything I've worn playing sport in, and they are a brilliant bit of headwear. Thanks to T20 Vision for giving us lots of nice sunglasses and supporting the show. Jamie Miller Pope is my last number. It is, Jamie is a new pleasure. And that's the first thing to say. Thank you so much, Jamie, for hitting the button. And,
new Pope.
And there you go. The new Pope. Very good. Very good. Very good. The young Pope, possibly. Maybe the young Pope. Who knows? Out of the conclave into the Patreon account, into the Discord channel. 380 in sterling. The clue is that 380 is a tenfold increase for the number and relates to a famous cricketer to have read the Sabibi's bedtime story. Maybe this is appropriate that I'm going to read an answer about Sabibi's bedtime story before I, in exactly 10 minutes from now, hit stop on the podcast, sprint to nursery, collect Peggy, and we probably won't watch Sabibi's bedtime stories because she's got a bit of a thing for going out in the backyard and running amok at the moment after nursery, but we might. She might feel like a little lay down. She had a bit of a lay down on the sofa with me yesterday. Nothing better in my life than when Peggy says, Daddy Duddle? I'm like, fuck yeah, Daddy Duddle. Here we go. Let's hug it out. Right, Sabibi's. Sabibis. This is the bedtime story bit at the end of the program each night. Sabibis is the BBC's kids channel, like ABC Kids. You know, we know what it's like, Jeff. We were kids once upon a time. My first thought here were the Siva Brunts, Catherine and Nat, who did this at the very start of the 100. They were promoting the Trent Rockets. I took a bit of a squiz and had a look and tried to remind myself. It was during Pride Month, which is, you know, for me, a nice thing. I wrote the story with them when they decided to announce their relationship and essentially come out on International Coming Out Day in 2019, which feels an eternity ago. To think that that was just something that wasn't being talked about until 29 from their perspectives, despite having had a relationship that dated back to the World Cup in 2017 and so on. But anyway, a lovely thing there, and they did that together. And yeah, I mean, context, Jeff, before we go on. This is the type of segment that celebrities love doing. I'll rattle a few off for you. Tom Hardy's done it a couple of times. Ed Sheeran, who, by the way, his new song Old Phone, which gets a bit of a run on Radio 2, shows how like 40-year-old man I am that's playing in our house in the morning. That really moved me listening to that because I can identify with any number of lines in it. It makes me quite basic saying that, doesn't it? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Steve Carell has done it. You know, I was watching the Netflix remake of Four Seasons over the weekend, which is outstanding. The Alan.
Yeah, I heard it was good.
It is very, 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 very good.
I was watching Tom Hardy's umbrella routine a couple of days ago.
I'm not even sure if I know what that is, but what's he do with the umbrella?
It's a dance piece, but it's extraordinary.
It's not like elephant walk stuff. It's more sophisticated than that. I'd recommend it on Netflix. Not that we're doing maybe we should NordVPN TV recommendations.
Yeah, what you can watch from anywhere in the world.
Yeah, it wouldn't quite work, does it? NordVPN.com/TFW. You can, your subscriptions can work anywhere. Billie Eilish, Paloma Faith, Ryan Reynolds, David Tennant's very good at it. I've seen his before. Harry Styles, Kate Winslet, Idris Elba, David Grohl. You get the picture.
Dave Grohl knows about having babies.
True, he does. Campaign to get Norcross on there. 23 Ashes when we were at Manchester, Jeff. When it rained and rained and rained. Norcross started reading a novel to Charlotte Swift, our colleague from the BBC, and he did all the voices of the characters. It won't surprise you to learn that Daniel is extremely good at that craft. And given he works for the BBC already, get Daniel on Bedtime Stories at some point. National treasure in training. Ben Stokes has done it back in 2022. I guess that's the height of Bazball. He read a book called The Hug by Owen McLaughlin about friendship and support. And better he reads that than, read some of the books from
The Punch by...
The Slap.
The Slap by Christos Chalkis.
I was thinking more, I'm glad he's reading that book and not a book from some of the podcasts and whatnot that he's shared on Instagram before, which are a bit ropier. But yeah, one other cricketer, Taha Maqsood. So this is what we're going to talk about Taha now because this is what it relates to. But she came up like 3 weeks ago, Jeff. We were talking about Sunrisers and their first win and a fifer that she took. I'm pretty sure.
First five for the team.
Yeah.
No Sunrisers player had taken a five before.
Yeah.
Defending a reasonable score.
And obviously the Sunrisers are no longer, and I'll tell you more about where her career's ended up in England domestic terms. But yeah, she initially read in the summer of 2023, following on from what the Siva Brunts had done. They gave her a slot wearing her Birmingham Phoenix kit from the 100, and she read a book called Not Now Noor, and that's about a girl realising what her hijab represents, what it's about, and explaining to people who ask questions what it's about to them, which makes sense, right? If you see someone wearing a piece of traditional headwear and that's not part of your day-to-day culture, it could be, jarring's the wrong word, but it might just be something out of place. So I can imagine a lot of young...
Kids ask questions.
Yeah, I can imagine
anybody. Why are you wearing that? What's that for?
Right. But I can imagine at school, as a young kid, it's especially taxing when you've got to have the same conversation over and over. Sure. So that's a really important book for her to have read as part of South Asian Heritage Month. And then in 2024, she came back, I think it was in her Sunrisers kit this time, and she read Under My Hijab by Hannah Khan. And that's, again, a similar themed book and relates to her upbringing. She's also studying to be a dentist. She may well be a dentist by now, but she was studying at that point. And it's a strong message at the end about, encouraging kids to do anything they want. And if there's no other message out of trying to grow the game, it's that, isn't it? That anyone can play cricket. We want the game to be available to everybody, and no matter what faith or background or gender or whatever it is, and that's a strong message from her. Does it in such a lovely Scottish accent as well. And look, the link here isn't about her religion, although she did read books about her religion on Storytime. It's about her cricket, and she bowls leggies. Made her debut at age 19 from Glasgow originally. She's the daughter of Pakistani immigrants. Took up cricket at 11. She was a flag bearer at the 2014 Commonwealth Games in Glasgow, her hometown, so a nice thing there. Earned representative honours with Scotland initially in 2017 and 2018. And the game in question relates to her T20 international debut at Amstelveen, which is where the Dutch play. She was playing Uganda, so it must have been a tri-series or a quad series or something like that. The Dutch were playing at Amstelveen on Saturday night, and I was texting my mate, Don Malacey, who he and I have been going to the footy together since we were very young, and he's now able to go to the footy, I guess, with us again because he was Footscray's recruiting manager, national recruiting manager, and he just finished working with them recently, so he's allowed to be a Hawthorn supporter again. Anyway, he's telling me that he was at a house party with, I say house party like it's, we're all too old to go to house parties now. He was at a party, maybe a dinner party, with, he goes, I'm here with the captain of Holland's dad. I'm like, Scott Edwards' his dad. He goes, yeah. And I looked on Crick Info. I'm like, he's batting right now. He made 80 odd for the Dutch against Scotland at Amstelveen on Saturday night Australia time. So nice coincidence there. In this game where the Scots were playing Uganda in a women's T20I in 2018, the Uganda were rolled for 43. And the subject of our conversation today, Tubba Maqsood, picked up 3 for 8 from 2.3 overs. Our number here is 380, thus 3 for 8, 10-fold increase. You can see the mathematics. You can see my workings on that front. She played 15 games, has played 15 games for the Phoenix in the 100. She's now moved from the Sunrisers to Essex. So most of the Sunrisers players have become Essex players because they got tier 1, whereas Middlesex got tier 2 along with Northamptonshire. So if you were a Sunrisers player, you're most likely now playing at Essex. Had a steady start to the one-day season, picked up a 2 for and a 3 for in the game she's played so far. She was playing for Scotland very recently in a qualifying tournament that you and I were talking about over in Pakistan, albeit without Scotland progressing, sadly, because the home nation, Pakistan and Bangladesh, made it through out of that group for the next World Cup. She's played over 70 games for her country. Outstanding numbers, 24 wickets at 19 in one-day internationals, and 53 wickets, 17.6 in T20Is with her leg spin. And it made me think of Miriam Omar, who's been a guest on The Final Word before, a Palestinian who has spent most of her life in Q8, plays for Melbourne University Cricket Club. She's played 32 times for Q8, but also plays in the hijab, and very proudly so. And she was a wonderful guest talking with me when we made one of our Fair Break episodes a couple of years ago, highlighting the stories of players who normally wouldn't get mentioned. So, and she's also, I remember this, she's an engineer in Melbourne working on some of the massive infrastructure projects that are being developed across the state at the moment. It might have been the Metro Tunnel. She's got this second career, interesting backstory, and a fine cricketer as well, Miriam Omar. Hope she's going well. But Tubba Maqsood, Scotland international for Jamie Miller-Pope. I'm almost certain that'll be the 380 for him based on his Sabibi's watching. And who knows, when I head off in a minute, maybe I'll watch it this afternoon as well.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Jamie, for joining in, for being part of what we're doing. Someone who's been part of it for a while is Simon Butcher. So time for a quick revisit. This was from a number that was way back on Storytime 177. Simon said this was a delayed response to follow it up, and then I think our response was also delayed. So this is how we've got to where we are. Simon said, whatever our answer was, I don't remember what it was, but that Simon had in mind a mercurial English fast bowler from the 60s and 70s. I also chose a number that related to his batting. Now, I had a slight crisis of confidence here because I realised that Len Caldwell retired in 1969, but that was from first-class cricket, did keep playing lower level down where he started at Devon after that. So maybe Simon's just remembering him as 1970s, but I felt like this was the way to go with this story, purely for a test batting average of 4.5, which suggests that there's a point of interest here. This is, Adam, this is a very classic sort of 1960s bowler story in that you've got a bowler with a monster county career who doesn't play a lot of Test cricket and doesn't get that much opportunity. In that era where England are chopping and changing, especially faster bowlers we have so many of those, huge career, first-class career types who play something like the 7 Tests. That Len Caldwell played 15 seasons at first-class level, more than 300 matches, just over 1,000 wickets, 1,076 to be precise, and spent his whole career at Worcestershire. So one club player, So I'm trying to think who the quintessential stereotype ones are. Scott Pendlebury, one club player, that type of thing.
Basketball.
Did he play basketball? Amazing. Steve Smith used to bowl a bit of leg spin. Who's the one? Shane Crawford would be the one I was thinking of from your lot.
Yep. Yeah. 305 games, one club player. Michael Tuck, 426. Although a lot of Hawthorn players are like team of the century, finish their career somewhere else. I once posited that the team of players, Hawthorn greats who finish their career somewhere else, is better than St Kilda's team of the century. Full stop. I stand by that.
Just here to stir the pot. Well, this was not Len Caldwell, who was Worcestershire through and through. Started with Devon as a youngster in is Devon a minor county?
Yep.
Yeah,
Devon played minor counties. It's where Peter Roebuck finished his career.
That's right.
And it's not just that; it's many things, but it's a strong minor county traditionally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing adjacent to a minor county game this week between Bucks and Oxfordshire. We've got a game. We're sharing the pavilion with the minor counties game, which will be nice. I suspect the catering will be absolutely outstanding. But yeah, it's still the case that they play. I think I'm right in saying 5 3-day games a year and 10 one-day games a year, and a 2020 Cup. And now they've got the infrastructure of the Challengers, which is the minor count. The team that used to be known as the minor counties are now known as the Challengers, and that's a men's team and a women's team who have got more resources with a view to trying to get some of them playing in the formal county structure. So trying to bridge that gap between minors, which are very much not professional cricket because it can't be, and because there's no money to be pro, and obviously where county contracts kick in at a certain level and players that might have fallen through the gaps and that type of thing.
Okay, so minor counties and major counties. Have they thought about rebranding? Major League Cricket, something like that? Could that work? 1964 and 65, that's when Worcestershire win the championship back-to-back, and it's heavily built on Len Caldwell bowling in tandem with Jack Flavell, not Les Favell, who comes up in many other stories. So Len is a swing bowler. He's an in-swinger fundamentally, and we were talking about the chucking panic of the 1950s and 60s, the moral panic of bending the arm, which worked for him in that 2 of his rivals at Worcestershire were seen to be suspect and fell out of favour, and he was able to make the most of that spot with Jack Flavel bowling outswing and Len bowling in swingers. Could do a lot of work. So the first few seasons he's bowling 500 to 700 overs, which is pretty heavy workload. 1961 and 62, he bowls over 1,100 overs in each season. He takes 140 and 152 wickets respectively. So he's a proper pace bowler, but he's doing sort of spinners level of it's a length of shift, I suppose, and partly Jack Flavell is injured through some of that period, which is why Len Caldwell has to bowl so much. Gets his test call up in that time, plays 2 against Pakistan, takes 9 wickets in his first test across the 2 innings, takes 4 in his second, so he's gone well to debut. Goes to Australia in 62-63, plays in Melbourne and Sydney, also plays a test in Auckland, but the conditions don't really suit his style as a swing bowler, so takes 5 wickets in his 3 tests on the Antipodes tour. And then with Jack Flavell back at Worcestershire, the workload drops back to the more sensible sort of 600 to 700 overs in a season, just the 700.
Yeah,
I know.
Absurd overs numbers, but yeah,
right.
Relatively speaking.
It's absolutely monstrous. He takes 98 wickets in their first championship winning season. It takes 80 in the next season. And in 1964, although it's relatively early in the season when he's taking all those wickets, he's done enough by June to get an Ashes call up, gets Bill Lawry out and a couple more at Trent Bridge, gets Ian Redpath out at Lords, but not much else, and that's pretty much as far as it goes for his Test career. But he gets to bowl at Trent Bridge with Jack Flavel. That's the one time that they play a Test together, the two Worcestershire opening bowlers. And that's the game. Is it Trent Bridge or is it Lord? It's Trent Bridge. That's the game where England declare twice and lose.
Oh, right.
So this relates to what we were talking about. He does get to bat in theory both times. He's on the card both times, but he's zero not out in both innings.
So Jack Flavel, I just had to remind myself of this. He was who they brought in to play at Manchester in 1961, where he made his debut on the back of what he had done. And I'm going back a while now since I read the book, Blue Suede Shoes, but it was on account of what he had done in the tour game against Australia, and they just felt that was a gut pick. And of course, the Manchester Test match of 1961 is one of the perhaps in the top 10 tests ever played, which is the feature of that book. But he debuted there, and it was down to what he'd done in the tour game, which would never happen now, right? You wouldn't get the chance to build up a body of evidence against a touring team. But back then, it wasn't just the Test matches. It was the counties. It was the MCC. It was North v South. It was Gentlemen v Players. It was all these other fixtures on the schedule that gave a player the chance to maybe play the touring side 2 or 3 times outside of the Test realm in first-class cricket. And Flavel was able to make his case there. And I think he took I feel like he took an important early wicket. Let's have a quick squiz here. He knocked over Peter Burge, who that was in the first dig. And in the second innings, he bowled a long spell, picked up 2, Bob Simpson, and then one towards the end as well. So there you go. Bit of history on him.
Yeah, so he was that bowling partner, and Len Caldwell ends up not out in both innings, where they decided that there wasn't much point leaving him out there to bat. And the body of evidence does bear that out as far as Len with the stick. In all first-class cricket, it took him 29 innings to reach double figures for the first time when he got to 10. It took him 38 innings to get more than 10. He made 19 after his 38th time batting in first-class cricket. It took him 81 innings to reach 20 for the first time, and he managed to get all the way up to 30 in that innings. But the 30s were few and far between. 346 innings batted. I counted 6 occasions when he made 30 or more, and his highest score in his career was 37. So, 340 innings where he didn't make 30.
So what was his first class? His Test average 4.5. What was his first class batting?
5.94, which is generous in that it was helped by the fact that he got 99 not outs out of his 346.
Not quite, not quite Hopper Reed levels of 3.67, which we've. I think he's the second lowest ever for first class. Maybe he's the lowest English batting average when you qualify by a certain number of innings, like 20 innings or something like that. I still think there's a book in Hopper Reed as opposed to Chopper Reed. But there's a great interview on YouTube with him.
Do a combo.
Christopher Martin Jenkins. Yeah. Sadly, he's been dead for about 30 years. But yeah, the Hopper Reed story, quite only having played 1 Test match and briefly having been the fastest bowler in the world's always interested me. Anyway.
I'm imagining like a Waiting for Godot style thing where you can imagine a conversation where Hopper and Chopper are hanging out for a prolonged period of time.
Like the Shane Warne time travel, the Shane Warne mural, same energy. Maybe it's a more Jonathan Liew kind of project.
It's a full length play, perhaps. So 99 not outs to get him up to an average of 5.94 in first class cricket. The Test average of 4.5 is built on 7 innings and 5 not outs. So he totaled 9 runs in his whole Test career, and 6 of those were not out in his last hit in that game at Lords, where he didn't do much with the ball, and that was that. So can we call that mercurial with the bat? Perhaps. Is it the right answer? I don't know, but I looked up the story, and so I thought I would tell Simon about it because I found it entertaining enough to pass on. And that's it. That's me for the day. I think that's you for the day as well. Storytime 228.
Yes, thank you, Simon, for holding on there, given that was originally in Storytime 177, which, we're going back the better part of a year or something between when that was recorded and what this is as well. So we do get there eventually. We thank, as always, our magnificent Final Word community who we're ever so proud of. I love them very dearly. Looking forward to seeing so many of them up in Edinburgh next week, just to go full circle on the show. They've become, lifelong friends, a lot of these people now, and watching them run around in Edinburgh and then watching us will be very special. So chip in, do your thing, get on board, join us on Discord and in all the usual places if you want to support the show in an ongoing way. our commercial partners that we wouldn't be able to do everything else with are just as important to us as far as the ongoing backing they give us. So in Maurice Blackburn's case, our principal partner, our gratitude to them and all the others that you can find in the show notes in the usual way. This has been Storytime 228. There will, in all probability, be an interview in the feed in a couple of days, and then we'll go round and round again, as is the custom on The Final Word. Thank you for listening throughout this week, and yes, have a nice weekend.
Okay, see you later.
Right.